Hi everyone, I'm Mike and this is David, and we are the designers of Astronaut the Best. And today we are delighted to be joined by Sean Bouchard, who's a professor of game design at USC, as well as a co-host of the Mostly Walking Adventure Game podcast. And so for LudoNarraCon, we wanted to, be able to talk about cool Ludonarrative stuff, which we're always looking for an excuse to do. And so Sean was the first person we thought of. And so I guess we'll turn it over to him and kind of let him drive and start to dig into all of this.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mike. I just want to say I've known you guys for a long time. You're dear friends. I'm so excited to do this. You're not kidding when you say you like to talk about Ludonarrative stuff. And I do too, so I'm jazzed to be here. And I'm super excited to be playing this game, Astronaut the Best. First of all, it's got the best title. I love that title. And I've been following development eagerly for the past few years because I know your work and I know your games, and I'm really excited to play this one. This is a joy for me. It's a real treat.
Aw, I appreciate it. I think way back, I think you were one of the very first people we showed this game to at a GDC in 2015 or something. We had it on a Kindle, and it was a super early prototype.
Yes, I do remember. I don't remember the Kindle, but I do remember that. You've been doing really interesting stuff with interactive and procedural narrative forever. And this game, I think, embodies a lot of that spirit. And yeah, I was really excited to see it way back in 2015. I'm super excited to get to play it now.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, I guess I'll start to tab over to the game screen view.
Let's do that. Let's dig into it. All right. So I'm brand new to this. I'm fresh. I'm gonna start a new mission and just see what happens.
Yeah, I assume that it's obvious why there is a lion on a desk and such.
Obviously, the FRSA lion, of course. All right, so this, I'm guessing, is the tutorial mission. Introduction to your new role as director of the Flaustrian Royal Space Academy. Obviously, okay. So great. Let's learn about Flaustrian Space Academy. Flaustria is standard issue spaceship suited for all space situations. No special effects. Astronauts are their normal selves, but of course they are their normal selves. So I have options here, but they are all locked. Oh my gosh, the promise of progression. I am excited by that.
Yep, that's why that menu's there.
Are there any games out there that show stuff that's locked, but you can never see it? You can never earn it just as a troll?
That sounds like a fun troll. I have a thesis student this coming year who I might try to convince to do that kind of trollery. That sounds fun.
That one's free.
Oh! You remember? Did you ever play Dino Park Tycoon when you were a kid? Game
I don't
having
think I know that
dinosaur. It was a game that was you made a dinosaur theme park. They had it on the school computers when I was a kid.
Okay. Sure.
But there was it had all of the dinosaurs that you could buy, and there was one that cost a ridiculous amount that was called an Elvisaurus or something like that. That was clearly meant to be oh, you could never afford this. But then if you did, so of course my friends and I just worked super hard trying to get enough money in a playthrough to earn it. And then when you do, the store UI is a crane picks up the egg and gives it to you, and it picks up the egg and then it drops it on the floor. So it is definitely 100% just a troll, you can never actually get this. And it was,
That's amazing.
It was less of like a, like, oh, this is avant-garde, and more just like games were kind of more free to be dicks to players back then.
True, that's true. Although, you can make an argument. If you really want to be a dick to a player, I think indie games are the place to do it.
Yeah. So I think we try. Yeah. So I don't know. We tried to pick our spots with this game.
Yeah. Yeah. No. I'm not accusing you of anything.
Well, I mean, you've already
right.
gotten past the intro menu, so.
Yeah, I know. This is the first screen, so here we go. The High Priest of Flaustria welcome you to the service. We've gathered here to remember the director of the Flaustrian Royal Space Academy and to condemn their soul to eternal torment for their many failings. What a funeral. We must reach space before the hated Vladigar. The former director would not have done so. I see. Okay. Needed to be replaced. Under their direction, astronauts conducted themselves sinfully and became public embarrassments. Okay, so I gotta be really careful, concerned about the moral standard of my astronauts. Plus, those old astronauts were ugly. Who let that happen? Their mistakes will not be repeated. Our space program must improve. I see. So I'm understanding these as like a cabinet of advisors, sort of like early Civilization game style, where they're going to give me kind of advice according to different perspectives, which sounds awesome. That sounds good. I believe that I am this new director person. They're going to say something that will reassure all of us, plus all the public and media watching. Low stakes. Solemnly swear the FRSA will cease its public embarrassments. Wait, I'm the director. What do I do? The High Priest secretly killed the old director. You have to believe me. Okay, I'm gonna play this straight. I love these dialogue options, though. New director promises less shame, more glory. That is my promise. That's what I'm gonna do.
Good. We do plan on. I want to give an achievement if you for doing a speed run if you pick the bottom one. Mm-hmm. Because if you pick the bottom one, the High Priests, like, they cut the lights and the cameras, and then they murder you, and then the game starts again.
Yeah.
So
it's a little
I want to give an achievement for you can do a 5-second speed run of this game if you really want.
Totally. No, that sounds extremely good. That 5-second speed run, that's what I look for in a narrative game. 100%.
I think
the purpose.
There was one in Outer Wilds too, right? Because you could die before you get to the time loop conceit.
Yes.
The game technically ends.
Yes. I do. I think I did that at one point, and just sort of just to see what would happen.
I did it by accident.
That is also entirely possible.
But anyhow, yeah. All right. So you're gonna play this straight.
All right. Purpose of the FRSA is to bring glory to Flaustria by any means necessary. The press has one more question for your program, as do we. Why should we fund the Space Academy? What value besides glory will it provide us? Okay, devotion to our 5 gods seems pretty good. Knowledge of the unknown, I don't know about that. Profits seems probably desirable. Excitement, romance, security, and defense. This is probably actually, I'm guessing this aligns with my 5 characters here. But in general, I think that profits and colonization is what people want. Oh, no. Always security and defense. We're going to go with that. Because it's not just these guys, it's also the media, and I know the media eats that up. I can see how space would be valuable for reconnaissance and defensible outposts. Of course. I gained favor with Starnat, High Priest of Mongoose, Protector against Serpents. Hell yeah, that's right. I'm going to all Starnat. Do not forget that purity and devotion are the foremost goal of any Flaustrian director. Oh no! We're probably done with the funeral now, right? Director, you must make these astronauts into the heroes that Flaustria needs. I'm gonna do that. That's my whole goal here. Oh my gosh. Oh, I have a daily high priest? That seems like a really awkward system. Okay, Rulu might visit.
We had a class at USC with 2 professors who alternated, and it was, it inspired us. No, it's just
That's
like
awesome.
each high priest, they do work together and communicate, but each of them has a different type of weather. So it's very astrological. The weather corresponds with the god, and the god corresponds with the high priest, and so
of course.
So they kind of rotate who's in charge of bugging you on that day.
You might get out of it sometimes, depending on what else is going on in the game.
I can imagine, sure. Well, Rulu doesn't hate me yet, so that is a plus in my book.
But today, it being the tutorial,
Yep. We got a whole cabal showing up. We're here to answer any questions you may have on your first day. Who am I? Where am I? What should I try to do here? I actually cameras are off.
Yeah.
I'm going. I'm doing it. I'm just gonna go through the list.
Okay.
You're the new director of Flaustrian Royal Space Academy, but if you're asking questions like that, you might not be for very long. This one came out strange, just so you know. We're in the director's office of the FRSA near Goat's Larder, which is some kind of a landmark with an incredible name.
It's the Heartland.
That's the Heartland? That's the sort of like mid-country?
Yeah.
Here you have everything you could need to supervise the new batch of astronaut cadets. And I actually feel like I have a pretty good handle on who they are. I do want to know what I'm supposed to be doing. Your job is really very simple. Our personality suppression field keeps the astronauts free of distractions and ready to learn the skills of spacefaring. Incredible technology that. You may treat them as mere collection of stats. Your job is to make those stats go up. That's wonderful. That's wonderful flavoring. Tell me about this personality suppression field. Helps astronauts get into the right mindset to train for their mission. That sounds great to me. That seems like it's going to make my job a lot easier, honestly.
Yeah.
This situation is best for everyone.
It's a good.
You have those at USC, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's find out about these stats. Astronauts have 5 core stats that represent their abilities across all the dimensions of performance relevant to Flaustrian astronaut: piloting, procedure, fitness, beauty, and charm. The only 5 stats that there are. Flying a spaceship, that's the easy part. They got to deal with the media. They got to deal with life. If your astronauts have higher stats, they'll be more likely to succeed at any kind of challenge they face. Fantastic. Okay, and training? Train your astronauts to improve any of their 5 stats. Just go into the training menu, assign each astronaut to a different type of training, and confirm. The astronauts will go about their training until the end of the day. Train your astronauts every single day. The personality suppression field will keep them motivated no matter how hard you work them. I love it. That's great. That's fantastic. Did you feel like you had to narratively justify the thing that like this genre of game does, just like throwing a pile of stuff?
So this is somewhat scaffolding.
Sure.
I don't want to spoil what happens.
We went
with
through
it,
a lot of different intro missions and tutorials, and we found that it was best to just have the game be about the core mechanic of making the numbers go up. Give you a little bit of time to just do that before we start throwing the other stuff in there.
Before throwing other stuff.
Yeah.
Complicating factors. I love it.
Because there's already, like, besides the mechanic, we really have to get players like situated in this world. That was the main thing that we kind of took for granted, was like how weird this situation is. So the tutorial has like almost more, I guess, narrative scaffolding than it does like mechanical scaffolding.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, and I feel like, you know, you're heightening that with the art style, like and obviously the dialogue. You're really kind of like drawing attention to what a bizarre world this is. But I think giving players some time to adjust to that is probably really important.
It cuts the tails off the distribution for sure. Like we used to put in like trade shows and stuff, players into like the second mission right away because we hadn't written this, and you'd get like two responses, either like no or like yes, but I don't understand it. Like,
yeah, like there are people who are just like looking for like a I don't know, like a Dark Souls type experience of just like let me just click on all the things and I'll figure it out. But like
right.
Even the players that wanted to do that usually didn't figure out a lot of the stuff. I definitely recommend that your game makes some effort to scaffold or tutorialize.
Tremendously important. Tremendously important. And I love that you're doing it. Okay, so despite the previous administration's failures, one astronaut distinguished himself. You will begin by training Gareth Commodore in whatever way you deem appropriate. Here we go, Gareth Commodore. Look at him. He's got awesome hair. He's joined the FRSA. Never look a shape in the eye. That's a good quote.
Yeah, that's maybe...
Good motto. It's a good
maybe
strategy.
The first bit of randomized content. The little, like those cards that said an astronaut is joining, they just kind of looked a little, like, I don't know, they looked a little blank, so he added, like, a little fortune cookie message at the bottom.
I take it as, like, his personal motto. His, like...
Okay.
Like his yearbook quote, right?
Oh,
like, that's what...
Okay. Yeah.
That's how I understand it.
Yeah.
All right, I'm getting some positive encouragement. I like that.
It may be the last you get for the rest of the game.
Probably true. All right, here's training. I'm going to do some training. Here's my Commodore. Hover over the astronaut and click one of the options above. Let's see, I got a simulator, classroom, exercise, charm school, makeover. I am... this is a media savvy deal. We're going to go charm school. That's the most important. Like, you only get one chance to make a first impression, right? And I guess this guy has already made a first impression, but you only get one chance to make a second impression. So
yeah, like it's the inductive principle. Like you only get one chance to make an n+1 impression.
Exactly.
Some people have less than one chance for a first impression.
That's true. But we're gonna give it to Commodore here. All right, here we go. All right, I lost some money because I'm doing some training. This is your first time training an astronaut, is it not? To train an astronaut, simply press and hold the mouse button once. The longer you hold, the more they will learn, but the more stress will take its toll. Okay. It's your decision whether to use a gentle tap or push them with a grueling hold. All right, here we go. Here's my training button. We're gonna learn some stuff. Oh gosh, okay. Things got a little bit wild there. All right, so, okay.
When we were trying to prototype how training would go, I don't know, like a lot of comparable games had a little like dexterity. We were considering like dexterity / skill challenges of like, you've got to, time it right or mash a button or whatever. But I don't know, we decided that we didn't want that for accessibility reasons, because we didn't want anybody, like this game is like, it's a game about talking and like making choices and stuff, and we didn't want it to like, how dexterous you were to determine your success. So but at the same time we wanted it to be something kinetic. We wanted it to be something that would not take longer than 5 seconds in any circumstance and would just feel like, you know, a fun thing rather than like, you know, making a choice from a menu. So that's why we decided to go with that. Just the longer you hold, the harder you push the astronaut, because that way if you do have an accessibility issue where you know, can only like tap it, you still, you know, you aren't disadvantaged. It's a totally valid strategy. It just kind of gives you a little more like self-expression when you interact with it.
I think we didn't also want to get in the... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think you succeeded at making it feel kinetic. You know, obviously, like, there's an interaction, but the way that the room started to sort of, like, vibrate was kind of overwhelming in a way that, like, felt really real. It was good feedback for me pressing that button.
Yeah, you know, we don't want people to press, like, a red button without it being, like, you know, stuff happens.
It needs to be a sense of consequence.
And it can vibrate more.
I'm sure, but it felt like I was touching a hot stove. I just sort of instinctively. No, that's
the sort of feedback that we always want to give players for pressing the button to advance the state of the game.
Yeah. I like the simplicity of it. Like, I understand where you're talking about these other possible ways of implementing this mechanic. I think that I understand where that comes from, but I really do like the simplicity of you're just, like you say, this is a game about talking. It's a game about management, right? Like, and that's not about dexterity. That's not about like, the being able to move stuff around on the screen. It's about sort of like making that decision of how hard you're going to push somebody, fundamentally, which I really like that.
Cool.
I also like your astronauts will be judged is extremely intimidating to me because I realize somebody, do I know? Oh, Starnaut is going to visit. And that is that's not the stat that I trained, so we'll see how that goes. Welcome to the All-Seeing Eye, Flaustra's most trusted source for news and entertainment. Today, my sweet little goldfish, we welcome popular comedian Fast Gene Hydrowski. Hello, Igneous. I have a joke for you. The Flaustrian Royal Space Academy, they are the joke. Damn, I got burned there. That's rough. Fast Gene, don't you have any faith in our fine nation's space program? My grandmother has a better chance of reaching space than the FRSA, and she is scared of even the airplane. And she's so very fat, and it is so hard to lift her. We've had fun here today, but are there serious concerns to be had about the FRSA? Uh-oh. They don't seem happy. I trust you have heard about the shameful display that soiled our nation's televisions. You're a lucky dog, Cap. Normally some hack crapping all over your agency would be bad news. But us, we fix things. I had a word with the show's producer, and I got you a stone-cold opportunity. Sweet. Next week, your astronauts will appear on the popular television program, The All-Seeing Eye. You have 5 days to prepare 2 astronauts for this critical appearance. They will demonstrate their skills and disprove that subversive comedians slander. We found you one more astronaut so they can both go on the TV. It is Adelaide Caesar Clare. Adelaide Caesar Clare. Always start with the treetop. I like it. Good job, Adelaide. Here we go. Approved. She isn't as good, but with the personality suppressor thingy, she should be fine. I have gifted you an obligations board that will remind you of your goals. I love that. We expect your program to succeed, director. Adios.
That reminds me, I saw some commercial the other day that unironically asked, like, do you love Gantt charts? And, like, you know, reality just kind of peeled back. I was like, what?
Wow.
That's amazing. Was that algorithmically served to you?
Did you provide edit? Do you I guess come across as the sort of person who likes Gantt charts?
I feel like
that's like an aggressive
that feels targeted
accusation.
to me. Yeah, exactly. That's very much a like. We have information about you.
Yeah, that's a little darker take on it. It's not a Super Bowl ad, obviously, but yeah.
All right, let's look at this obligations board, which seems handy. I have a deadline in 5 days on the 10th. You should have astronauts with fitness, piloting, or procedure of at least 7. Okay, so I wasted my first day. Sweet. All right, here we go.
That's okay. That Commodore is exceptionally competent.
Yeah.
I'm excited about Commodore. Commodore is gonna charm the pants off of those folks. Maybe he got some charm. Got +9 training. Okay, so let's see. Piloting, procedure, and fitness, I believe, are the things that I care about. Adelaide, Caesar Clare is best at fitness. So Caesar Clare is going to be my exercise person. And then Commodore, let's go ahead. I feel like we probably should have a pilot.
There should be somebody on the spaceship who can fly it.
I mean,
sure.
It sounds like that's not a requirement, so we'll see. But that's what I'm bringing to this as the director.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
I have a vision that somebody on this ship will be able to pilot it. Okay, I lost a lot of money. Here we go. All right. I'm looking at the UI because I know this is gonna get crazy. Stress is 16, breakdown is 0, level is 8, XP to next level, I need 140. Here we go. Stress is going up. Okay, stress is going up. All right. That's good. Look at that, Commodore. Still got it. And Caesar Clare already leveled up to 7. That's all I need. You can take the rest of the day off. Invigorating. The 5-legged lion pentagram and the snake.
Just like Equinox.
It's wonderful.
It's world building.
Okay, sunny day.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
Sunny day. Cora Blanche is maybe gonna come visit. That's not super. Or maybe it is. I don't know. I feel like I have an opportunity to redeem myself here.
Yes. Let's see how that
I am here bearing grave and terrible news. Not what I was hoping to hear. Okay, the personality suppressor has malfunctioned. Your charge's natural and shameful flaws will now be on display for all to see. This is a key event that presents serious consequences for you in the FRSA. I see. Here we go. Amazing. Okay, I see a slider, so I'm gonna slide. I see, I got like a tapestry here. Full of stuff. Personality problems. All right, we're gonna continue. We're gonna jump into this. Uh-oh, it's that guy. Director, did you know your rank? Your rank is D. That's not good. S rank is the highest rank. Oh man. Commodore gets caught up in the details. His aura is finicky and lacks conviviality. This is gonna make it so much harder to train these astronauts. Did you guys realize that this is gonna make it a lot harder for me? I don't know. I don't know if that occurred to you.
It could also make it easier. There could
it's
be
true. That's true. Do you think that I could figure out how to leverage his personality for my advantage?
It could be.
It could be.
It could
All right,
be.
let's continue. Hey, High Priest Cora Blanche, did you know there aren't actually 5 gods? There actually used to be more, you see. This feels like it's bad. As you can see, this situation is unacceptable. Hold on a minute. I gotta be honest, Director, I'm kind of getting bored of this whole space thing. I mean, isn't it kind of eh? Oh, no. Oh, no. Okay, Commodore has seen too many movies about space and played too many flight simulators. He just doesn't think the real thing is all that special. So that's -1 to piloting, which is what I wanted him to do. So that's not great. Okay. Sometimes I don't think it's even worth it to be an astronaut. But then I think about the shape of that rocket, you know what I mean? And the furious vibrations that course through it as it lifts off the launch pad. And maybe there's some aliens? Sweet. Okay. Okay, alright. So, we got a -1 to piloting, but then we got a +3 to piloting. So, like... That weird sex thing
he's motivated.
It's gonna help out. It's gonna help the program. No need to speak. I can see by the look in your eyes that you are simpatico. There's only one thing to do with a soul this broken and debased. Let us pray. No! Oh man, that's rough. A clock doesn't strike twice once. A clock doesn't strike twice once a day. Okay, all right. I'll take your word for it.
I guess that's sort of like the, first chance to make a second impression and such.
Yeah,
Same
that's
line
true.
of logic.
If the public found out how deranged these astronauts were, the nation of Flaustria might not survive. No, the FRSA is simply too much of a risk. The only solution may be to terminate your program. We shall speak tomorrow, Director. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I spent a lot of money training him and then he got thrown into a field. Ooh, I have a friendly lion spirit. I am the
he hasn't shown up yet.
spirit of Flaustria, incarnation of our proud country's ideals. Oh, sweet! Look at this. I met the spirit of Flaustria, and I progressed to, I know, a fork in the path.
Yeah.
You've had a tough day, Director. Seems like the deck is stacked against you.
So this lion, we pretty early in development, we found out that we needed the lion spirit of Flaustria, just because you're in this kind of middle management position where
Totally.
the high priests are your bosses, so you can't really talk to them. They just demand things of you, and you can't really be friends with your astronauts,
Right.
because you're their boss. So the game just I don't know, it was very lonely not having any friends or anybody to talk to. So this was, I guess, the first thing that came to mind was to have the flag come to life and be a friend.
That's the first thing that came to mind?
Yeah, like having somebody else go into the office would have just been like, we would have had to animate them and stuff.
I mean, you can complain, but what other astronaut the best are you going to play today?
That's true. No, that's a good point. That's a good point. You have a monopoly on that. I do love it. I love how nationalistic it is, and I love that I have a helpful sort of like guide who is going to help me out here. Flaustria has become obsessed with appearances and petty squabbles. You must give them something to believe in. Looks like you could use some help. Luckily, I have a trick or two up my main. I can keep a watchful eye on your astronauts through my image in flags and bills. That's incredible.
Yeah.
I'll ring your telephone if they're in trouble, and you can guide them to avoid embarrassment and act like heroes. Why, I can see a situation brewing right now. Let's turn it around and give Flaustria some hope for the space program. Amazing. I'm excited about this new mechanic. Seems your remaining astronaut, Caesar Clare, is in a sticky situation in a back alley. Hey, Director, is that you? I can kind of hear your voice. You may be wondering what I'm doing in this alley with no pants, a liter of gasoline, and a lit match. Well, the truth is I had one too many drinks after today's incident, so I can't quite remember myself. Okay, what is that astronaut doing? Something depraved or illegal or both? Oh no, my glory, my precious glory! A pantsless criminal, typical FRSA astronaut. What should we say? This is amazing. All of these are amazing. I'm trying to read into this and understand, like, is one of these gonna help me? It seems like they're all gonna help me. I'm gonna go with donating pants to an urchin who's making a bonfire to warm the homeless. Hey, look at that. That town crier completely misread the situation. And I agree that charitable donations should not be a crime. I guess not all astronauts are degenerate jerks. You guys have a message that you're trying to send with this game, or?
Yeah, like don't arrest people for giving clothes to poor kids. Like,
there you go.
Obvious.
Yeah, that's really what we're trying to say here. And, I don't care if we have to go out on a limb. I don't care who we upset with that message.
I like it. I like it.
No, we're just easing you into some of the systems.
No,
at this point.
that seemed like...
This is...
which is great. Like, I get sort of... I really do like the scaffolding, right? This progression of mechanics, the training, understanding sort of like the personalities, these sort of moments of decision that I think are going to get more complicated as we go. Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah. The future missions have more paths, more elaborate paths on their map histories, and this one is just kind of a introduction that you can steer in different directions by making your decisions.
But I like visualizing it like that too. It really gives me a sense of like, what is the scope of the consequences of these decisions? And here in training, in the tutorial, it's not much. They sort of like very much circle back together, but it leaves open this idea that they can be much more dramatic than that. Yeah.
And in general, I guess kind of our big narrative design theory with this game is that with a lot of narrative games that are about branching structures, it's pretty common for games to be about branching narrative structures. And there's a lot of different ways for them to handle that. Some let you skip ahead to the branches that you haven't seen. Some introduce time loop mechanics or dimension jumping mechanics so that you can go and explore all parallel realities and stuff. But what we do is use procedurality basically, so that you play the game over and you're like, oh, I kind of want to see what happened in those branches I didn't take, or see how you get to this thing over here. Sure. And while you're doing that, we have a bunch of different astronauts and a bunch of different random events and other things that happen, so that you're not doing the same thing, so that it's new content in a new, exciting situation.
Your experience of it is going to change every time you play it because of that. Yeah.
Both narratively and mechanically. So if different random events are happening, even if you take the same branches, and if different astronauts are being sent in, you can have different choices make more and less sense in terms of just mechanically trying to get through the game. So,
right. Yeah, you might be better equipped to pursue one strategy. You might be short on money or have a particularly charming astronaut, and things like that can, make even the same branching choice have a different, dynamics through different playthroughs.
Yeah, very much. Cool.
Yeah, but that said, this is a tutorial, so there's not a lot of random stuff going on. It's just kind of hey, this is what a decision looks like. This is the sort of thing that will happen in random events when we take the training wheels off.
More, not exactly mapped out ahead of you kind of consequences, but more obvious trade-offs in terms of what what might happen if you do one thing or the other.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I'm excited about that. Who's Morning Dew? High Priest of Moon, Shadow of Finality, and fan of Doomed Romance. Okay, gotcha. Good news. Since Caesar Clare was so heroic yesterday, we decided to give you a second chance. If your astronauts can still prove themselves on TV in 3 days, we won't have to cancel the program or have you killed. I love that. That's great. That's wonderful. Here we go. Here's my second chance.
Yeah.
Kind of a good thing that your astronauts have personalities. It will make the boring working world of this academy so much more exciting and dramatic. Look at Adelaide Caesar Clare. Did you know she hallucinates when she runs into someone born under the Falsetto Mountain sign? What an interesting trait! Traits don't just affect a person's stats, they also affect how they act in different situations. I guess it's your job to learn about your cadets. You can look at their astronaut profiles anytime. And remember that they're just human. If they get too stressed, bad things might happen. I bet giving them a day off from training sometimes would really help them out with stress. Okay. Good, important information. And Morning Dew trusts me, which is remarkable. I feel like I can do this now. But I still just have the one astronaut. Okay, great.
That's true.
And I am still going. I'm gonna pursue fitness.
Yeah.
It's just like a prog rock band name. I've never seen this trait pop up before.
Oh, yeah. It's, we do have, 13 zodiac signs. So I think that's, there's the madness trait, and then there's a lot of recombinance going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, her zodiac sign is the doghouse, I guess.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
All right, well, let's train her up.
Yeah.
Inside
dope on the traits.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the traits are fairly fixed, just like one version of them. But that one is a psychological trait, so it takes two different inputs. The stimulus and then the response in this case. So that one, can do quite a lot.
Yeah. So
I'm sure it's terrifying to me right now as a player, because I don't know how often it's going to happen that Caesar Clare is going to run into something born under the Falsetto Mountain sign. Like that seems like it could happen a lot. And those hallucinations, I don't know. It could go a lot of different ways.
I guess
I'll be honest. Yeah, it's not Falsetto Mountain Jackpot. That would be better.
Right. But luckily, you can largely control who she runs into.
Okay.
It's
going to be mostly about
it's about other astronauts. We're not going to spring on you
composition.
You went to this place and unbeknownst to you, there was somebody there with this zodiac sign. That would it's tough to draw a line between, I guess allowing for there to be unexpected consequences.
Sure.
While still letting the player feel like they have a sense of agency.
Yeah.
If you have too much table flipping moments like that, then it just takes away the player's agency because they can't make a plan or predict what will happen. So, it was important to us that the game is role-playing first, right? A lot of games, when you're making a decision, they'll have the mechanical consequences visible. For example, Crusader Kings or Reigns or most games, they'll have, little icons or something that kind of tell you, how things will cash out mechanically. But,
right.
It was, I don't know, we didn't want people playing this from that sort of card game type perspective. We wanted to really force people to imagine what they would do in this situation and try to make the best of it.
But have some connection, right? Like it's like you don't want the text to be flavor text that you can turn off, but you want to have a pretty good like idea of the expected value of the choice in mechanical terms.
Right. Like but because we don't have those previews of the mechanical consequences, it's it becomes imperative that we have it make sense like that, and more or less have it so that you can predict what the in most cases can predict what the effects of things will be, or else the player just doesn't have agency, which is something that we found out the hard way.
Yeah, I'm sure. Because I think like it's easy to have an instinct that would run contrary to that, but it's really like it's hard to communicate that agency to a player, especially in a procedural game, and you need to have a certain level of trust from the player that the game is going to continue to make sense, that it's not going to like sucker punch me the way that you're talking about, right? Like giving the player sort of the opportunity to make a plan, to see things coming, and to make mistakes because they're being asked to role play, I think is a lot of fun.
And that's been what a lot of our design process, iterating over the years, has been working towards. At first this game was very much like the make the numbers go up sort of thing, but that only lasted a few months, and then we decided fewer numbers, more personality problems. Because that was really what we wanted the game to be about, like the idea that the best person for a job might not be the best person at a job, that there are a lot of factors that determine...
That's really good. I like that a lot.
Yeah, David had read the book The Right Stuff, and this started off as a pretty straightforward adaptation of like...
for the first hour.
Yes.
Like.
Yeah, I will take the blame for that, of being like, the space program, that sounds boring. Can we just have there be like magic? Can we just have there be like demons? Can we just have there and like...
It's like fine as long as people barge into your office.
Right. Like, as long as, So it's really ended up being kind of a game about leadership, that there are just so many different factors that you have to consider, and there's so much that you're on the hook for that you don't really control, but you're responsible for. And so it's kind of like, what does that mean to you? What would you do in this situation?
Well, and I feel that coming across, and I think that that's like a really tricky thing to work with, because that's really stressful, and often in like the real world, stressful in a way that isn't fun. And so taking that sort of idea of being in that position, and I've got this crew of people who come in and berate me and have extremely high expectations, and often over things that I have limited control of. For sure, that feels realistic. That's relatable.
You mentioned early on that they were kind of like the advisors from Civ, or what's the other game? King of Dragon Pass was another one like that, where you had advisors, and it's kind of the exact opposite of that.
That's right. They're not here to help me. They're here to demand things of me. No, very much. I like that. But like taking that and making it entertaining, making so that I can have fun in that position, and actually, talking about role play, a little bit of the fantasy of being in this position where things are so heightened that I can kind of let go of them. I think is really, really cool.
Exactly. Where my head at when we started developing this was there a lot of like narrative like choices matter type games were sort of just in their kind of nascent blossoming. It was like the early like Telltale Walking Dead type games, and like Life is Strange and the Banner Saga and things like that were coming out, and they all asked the player to make like very interesting but very heavy decisions. There was an awful lot of like, choose whether this person dies, and like, will you, like a lot of trolley problems, and
like a BioShock type decision.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's what started that trend, really, like that.
Yeah. So there was like, it just got to be fatiguing, like playing games like that. For me personally, it was like, man, I am just making a lot of people get run over by trolleys here. And so I wanted to make a game that could be about, morals, essentially, and about like what's the right thing to do, but also kind of mischievous, I guess, like kind of encouraging the player into making weird decisions and stuff, and kind of having that trust of like, no matter what you pick, something entertaining is going to happen. So just, take it for a ride.
We missed out so much by never making a quick like trolley driving simulation game for like a game jam. Has no one ever done that? That could have been hilarious. Like,
yeah.
No, that seems legit. Yeah, I agree.
Like it starts off as like one of those train simulator type games, but then there's keep being different amounts of people on the tracks. Man.
Yeah, just increasingly like weird things you have to decide between, right? Like,
yeah.
It's like,
no, absolutely. But couched in a like hyper realistic, train cabin, like you're driving the mechanically driving the trolley. I like that. That's pretty good.
But then it's like, like a giant like plushy squid on one track, and then a bunch of like expensive baseball memorabilia on the other. Like, what do you do?
What do you do?
What do you do?
You have a limited amount of time to make this decision.
Yeah. Well, while we scream at you, like, is it gonna be the squid or the baseball cards? What do you do? Yeah. There we go.
I like that. Yeah. No, give me a panel of 5 people who are all yelling different things. I think that's the magic right there.
Yeah, this is somewhat of the experience of this game. Except they only yell at you after. You have to kind of have a mental model in your head of what they'll yell at you for.
I have expectations that I will be yelled at for this.
They might ask you to make promises that you don't want to make. That's
true.
That's part of it too. There's some thinking ahead.
Yeah.
Seems reasonable. All right. Well, should I see if I can train up my astronaut here?
Sure.
We're gonna play to her strength.
Her strength is strength.
Sorry, yeah. That took me a few seconds to get there.
There we go.
All right, couple levels up.
All right.
Okay, I feel good about how that went.
Oh, is this going to be the first random event of the day?
Here we go.
Well,
During today's training session... No, okay. Breathing through a tube to build lung capacity for low oxygen environments. Caesar Claire spent so much time blowing into a tube that she has lost the ability to breathe normally. Oh no. She now breathes exclusively through a tube, greatly irritating those around her.
Yeah, this is one of those real trolley problem type situations.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's an old school event when it worked first.
Incredible. So I can develop a sound effects machine that will distract from the issue. 180,000 units of currency. I don't think I can afford that. I can encourage Caesar Claire to spark a nationwide fad for weird breathing, which will be a test of her beauty and charm. I can take her tube away and make her sink or swim, which will be a fitness test. Is fitness is her strength, I think.
That's true.
So that might be a thing that I could do. I don't know that she's actually good at it. It's just the thing that she's good at. So I could hold a ritual according to Corin Blanche's advice. Ooh.
And just FYI, if it offers you the option to do something that costs money and it's not grayed out, you can't afford it.
Oh, okay. All right. Got it.
Yeah, it's the. I suppose this falls into the trolling category, but the currency of Flaustria is the K.
Okay. Got it. Right. Okay. So
I think what we might want to do is
misread that.
move at the top of the screen where it says K 1049. We might want to move it over so it says 1049K. I think that would probably make that a little more.
That would have helped
clear.
me in
Yeah.
this particular instance, I think.
Okay. That's a good note.
Okay, so 8. I don't really have a sense of like how good 8 is. I don't think it's great. I need to get in good with Cora Blanche. So I'm gonna take her advice and we're gonna see how that goes. Circle of Shame will cleanse Caesar Clare of impropriety, perform the ritual at once. Okay, so I'm gonna take a day off to do this ritual, which is okay with me because Caesar Clare has already met the requirement that I think she needs to meet. So I'm feeling good about this. I've committed to performing Cora Blanche's ritual as your astronaut's next activity. We can do that. I believe we can do that. I might be able to recruit a new astronaut today.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sweet.
Let's just say today, but yeah.
Let's do it. Director, I've noticed your academy does not have many astronauts. Good. I've found precisely 2 new applicants who will hopefully be helpful. We've got Charlotte Roomba. Never look a shape in the eye. I'm nervous about that because my last astronaut who had that as a fortune cookie. Oh no, both of them. Oh no.
Fear of pigs isn't bad though. It's a good trait.
Yeah. True.
Fear of pigs. All things muddy, smelly, and porcine. Keeps himself impeccably clean and well groomed. Something very bad could happen if he is ever faced with a real live pig. Okay. All right. Let's do it. Let's have new astronauts. I do not doubt that most of your astronauts are loyal, patriotic Flaustrians. However, Mongoose is always wary. What if they're holding dangerous secrets from you? For example, Adelaide Caesar Clare looks harmless, yes? But you can see that much of her personality is hidden. That is true. These hidden traits may be revealed in many ways. Training their related stat can give you a clue. Okay. With enough clues, you can reveal these traits entirely. Okay. Ooh. Whenever Caesar Clare sees anyone fighting, she recalls a repressed personality trait. Alright, alright. As I thought, Caesar Clare recalls a repressed personality trait when she sees anyone fighting. It's worthwhile to learn your force's weaknesses before your enemies or the media do. I'm personally hoping that the space program succeeds. Well, that's good to hear. That's what I was hoping from everybody, but... Alright, so
Yeah.
Caesar Clare is doing the ritual. Everybody's doing a ritual.
Yeah.
Cool.
So at this point, we're running up against 58 minutes.
Okay.
I guess we could stick around if you want to try to, get through the part where you go on the TV, or we could try to just do a last question / wrap up thing and wrap things up here.
Yeah. I mean, I'm happy to do whatever. I'm enjoying playing this game. When we end this stream, I'm gonna keep playing Astronaut the best because it's pretty cool. So I'm happy to do whatever. But I would love to talk for a minute about the development process of the game. Tell me. We've talked through some of the challenges of scaffolding the UI, but once we get into sort of the game proper and the complexity of all of these different procedural elements running into each other, what are some of the things that you took away from that you think make the game really shine?
I'm gonna go over to the faces scene for a second. Okay, cool. This is more of a free-form conversation. All right.
Sure.
Yeah. So That's a tough one. I think really having done a lot of procedural stuff in the past, it's really important to compartmentalize, because the enemy is combinatorial explosion, right? To some extent, the magic comes from that, right? Like the magic comes from that you could have certain things interact in unexpected ways, and so it creates delightful moments. But so I guess you want to kind of maximize the amount of things happening, but minimize the amount that you're on the hook for when they happen.
100%, yeah.
So like, if for example, if we had, like, like if this astronaut has this trait in this situation, then we explicitly want this special event to happen, and like, then if they have this other trait, then this branch will happen. Then like, we would essentially just be writing a very complex branching narrative with a bunch of branches that nobody will ever get to.
Yeah, I think a lot of that was Mike having a lot of experience with procedural narrative before getting in here, and having a really good, like, the equivalent to like code smells, I guess, for when like things were becoming exponential in their implications, and cutting it off right then. I think that's I think it I think you want things that are just kind of orthogonal as much as possible, or you want to be able to systematize things to have it so that that's essentially why a big benefit of having values in this game, like the glory, the money, how much the high priest like you, and some bunch of other stuff behind the scenes. Because we have those, we can cash out procedural elements into those instead of having them explicitly cash out into different branches or things like that. It's really... Oh, go ahead. Yeah, I think like having a lot of scripted atomic narrative events that could hook into a simple game state that was meaningful was something fairly new for us. I mean, like, it existed in, like, say, big scope, Western RPGs and stuff, but it was never like the meat, I think, of a game too much, except for the most direct influences.
Yeah, I know, in particular, I think Emily Short had given a talk about quality-based narrative, I think it was called. I think Failback had done some cool games with that. And so, so it was kind of, proven that that's having these sort of values is a good way to cash it out. And so what we did was kind of, I guess, wed that to this idea of combining procedural and branching narratives in this kind of bite-sized play session. A little bit we worked backwards from we want the game to take like the length of a movie to play, because we're grown-ups now and we don't have a ton of time to, like, if it's pretty clear a game is asking me to sit through a 6-hour tutorial, then I usually bounce. So there's just so many cool games out there. That I wanna be able to play one for an hour and a half and feel like I got something out of it. So
there's a big cutting the fat out of games that we liked a lot, but we thought they were maybe based on earlier paradigm of like player patience and time on their hands.
Right.
I guess.
We're I suppose like some ways at heart like an impatient Twitch gamer, and so I really loved like Sunless Sea, for example, where you're exploring this ocean and then you reach these islands and they have like stories that you can go to and choices that you make, and but I kept thinking like it would also be cool if you didn't have to make the boat go. If instead of you like going to all these places, like there weren't those moments of downtime in between. It was just like stuff happening, and so we there were some other games that I think go further in that direction of using traversal to kind of make you play the game for longer. So we wanted to make sure we weren't doing that as a crutch. So one of our early rules was like, no traversal. You sit in a chair, everything comes to you.
Yeah.
Isn't it ironic that to get more excitement, like you go nowhere? That's like, I guess it's like,
yeah, middle management, the height of excitement.
Yeah, that's where it's. Yeah.
I think it also really plays to the strengths of procedural narrative, because you can play through the game in an hour and a half and get a complete experience, and then come back the next day and play through it again and get a different experience, because so much of it emerges from the sort of procedurality of it.
And in a way, we were fortunate to be developing this game for long enough that the whole like roguelite boom happened while we were making the game. And so that when that happened, and you know, when like Binding of Isaac evolved into like Hades, and you know, all of the points in between over the course of our development, we were like, oh, we can do that for free. Like there's so much procedural stuff going into the game that it pretty much is a roguelike. All we need to do here is just add some like rewards and progression, and so that really I'd say, you know, you could kind of divide our development up into two phases. The first half was just kind of figuring out the systems and like what like the kind of core game would look like, and then the second was figuring out what we could build on top of that to give these systems of progression and a sense of reward, and also a sense of mystery and like unexpected things happening and there being, you know, a meta plot and stuff.
Right.
It was actually kind of convenient because we had too much stuff going on in the game, mechanics-wise, so we were able to take some of the stuff that was going on and gate it behind progression mechanics and make it be, know, like hidden things that you only get on like the fourth playthrough, because they were things that we originally designed into the game and then they were blowing people's minds. So, you know, it's a safer place for them.
Was there a it feels like there is this magic moment where you get enough kind of complexity in the procedural systems that are interacting with one another that it generates this thing that is exciting. Like, when did that happen? Did that happen early on for you? Is it something that you've been sort of like
honestly
nursing?
I can say that we did the responsible USC thing and paper prototyped it to get we had a couple early play tests where like we felt like we had something, where there were just like a couple, you know, where we just had cards for the astronaut traits, then we just like had a DM screen and we just had some choices, and it was originally like going to space instead of doing a bunch of bullshit not in space, which is what the game primarily ended up being. But like we at least pretty early on like had the sense that like, oh, there's something there. There's some weird stuff that can happen, and players, even if we can kind of see into the matrix and nothing surprises us, like players are getting pretty surprised by things, and so
the feeling like anything could happen, I think, came pretty early. The feeling of like this isn't a load of shit, like it's a real game, like took much longer. Like that was
That's
and
true.
like for both us and the players, I think we were like trying to imagine like I mean I think we believed it about the same time as the players.
Well, I think there's something intrinsic about that. I'm glad to hear that the responsible USC paper prototyping methodology pays off.
And it only took us 8 years to develop the game.
Yeah, that's how. Buy the book.
Yep.
Hear that, USC grads? Buckle up.
Yeah. So, you know, we did like the first few years we were pretty liberal with like kind of tearing things up and exploring a lot. And then after that, it just turns out, you know, we weren't working on the game full time for 8 years, certainly. I believe that if you were to pretend that we worked on this full time as a studio, it would have been under 3 years, which sounds a lot better in terms of not being, a giant morass.
We'll say 3 years non-contiguous.
Yeah.
There you go. 3 non-contiguous years.
I think, yeah.
But
it was like a lot of it really felt like a lot of like refinement of the details was necessary to make it like actually in terms of the work, a lot of it was just redesigning UI over and over again to like display the information correctly.
For sure. And I think it's remarkable because even through the tutorial and kind of like building up into the complexity of the game, there's a lot on the screen. There's a lot going on, understanding sort of like all of these traits and your relationships to each of these, advisor bosses and all of this stuff. It comes across, it communicates, I think, remarkably well, given what complexity is there and how it's sort of like building to something. To say nothing of, the art style and the dynamism of it. Like, I love the transition from the window back to your desk. It's just a very nice sort of like quick, smooth, but it gives you a sense of like grounded space, and emphasizes this idea that you're not leaving the office, that you are really just sort of like in this one place, in your command post doing your thing. The polish of the visual element of this, I think, is really strong and adds a lot to making it more accessible.
Yeah, that was a big, like actually from like just perspective of an indie developer, I think one of the things that was like always something that just scared the crap out of us is like with little resources, how can you make something visually substantial and exciting?
Yeah.
And we're lucky to have Julia, who's like, designed all this great art. But we also had some good influences in terms of like, I'd say in terms of how it's all put together. Like Danganronpa was like a huge influence in terms of like doing a lot with a little. And like, even though there's nothing, like we don't have any waifus, unfortunately, which limits our like sellability on Steam massively.
Sure, yeah.
But even though it's got this very, unusual, very American face to it, inspired by a lot of mid-century art and stuff. But it's sort of got that weird waifu core to it secretly.
Yeah, that it's the mixture of 2D and 3D, or like that kind of cavalier mixture of like having most things, having the art be 2D but doing a lot of like 3D nonsense to add visual dynamism.
We also loved some old stuff like Jammer, Lammy, and things like that. PlayStation had a lot of great like off the wall stuff that combined 2D and 3D very liberally.
Yeah.
We also learned, like you mentioned, we can have not fancy camera moves and stuff, but they have to be quick. That was another thing we learned very early on, was like if your UI transitions take like longer than 0.25 seconds, then your game will be, and you have to play your game to test it like every day, you'll learn pretty quickly that those have got to be faster. But
I mean, it feels very snappy, and it's interesting to hear you talk about how much behind the design, sort of like as core pillars of what you're doing, making it sort of happen quickly, making the game play quickly, making it sort of like not drag on, not take too long, not feel like a slog, how important that was. And I think it comes across. It is a very snappy experience. Going through the tutorial obviously is not the sort of like main game, but just in the way that it operates, it's clearly sort of respectful of the time that you're putting into playing.
Right. It was made by people with like an acute sense of their own mortality, And the like, and in general, like when imagining like kind of who we were imagining playing this game, we wanted it to be accessible to the person who was just playing these kind of narrative choice-based games or like more cinematic games or text adventures and wanted to like step into something with some more numbers and some more like strategy elements. And so we were kind of designing from that perspective, trying to make it so that it's despite the things that are going on, that it never overwhelms you with numbers, or that it never that's kind of the reason behind the scenes why everything is 5, why there are 5 stats and 5 high priests and all that, is because we did a very informal experiment early on where we saw how many numbers there could be on the screen before David zoned out.
Because my working memory has 5 slots in it, basically. Yep. Like it's like.
So yeah, we discovered that 6 things is too many, and so yeah, we want to just have. We did our best to make all the information that you need to make a decision visible on the screen when you're making that decision, and that took a lot of mapping out, all the sorts of decisions that you would have to make and all the information in the game and such.
Yeah. And another shout out to USC is we just like put it in front of a lot of people, right? Like a lot of it's like we showed it a lot for a long time and we got a lot of feedback. I mean, not as rigorously as back with the room with the one-way mirror, which I wish developers did more. I wish we did more, because
I wish I had more one-way mirrors in my house.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Just real, once again.
How to run a family the right way.
Yeah. But it is just a lot of making the game the game not being weird enough was only briefly a problem at the beginning, and then it was a lot of because those ideas of being grounded and having agency are tied together. Just letting the player make. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I would say like actually that's kind of like a trademark of everything Mike and I have worked on together, is like the initial seed is so bananas that like everything has to be totally straight after that. Like everything has to be as straightforward as possible, because it just can't be exaggerated further at like from very early on. So a lot of it, those pulling back, like more clarity, more like less weirdness, actually. Right.
Because for example, early on we had it so there was like when you looked at Astronaut stats, there was like basically a Ouija board. Right, there are these like rocks that you had on like a sheet of paper, and they would like shake and like move around to like show the astronaut stats. And if you've got a game that's like pretty straightforward, where characters have stats, and then you have something weird like that, it's like, oh, that's a cool bit of flavor. But like, if you have a game that's already weird and then you have that, it's just like people pretty quickly reach a point of nihilism, basically.
Sure. Intolerance of the absurdity. No, totally. I get that. I definitely get that. That's a really interesting point, that like striking that balance between, how into the deep end are you throwing the player, and then how much sort of like lifeline are you giving them to make them understand how they can move through the game.
Right.
That makes
and
a lot
giving
of
it
sense.
heart, I think. Like I think we both wanted to give it some heart, and hopefully it has that.
Yeah.
Because that's I think we started this in a time where a lot of games were either like sincere in a cringy way or ironic in a self-protective way, and that and when a game really had heart, like it's like Yakuza really has heart, right? Like who doesn't like feel that, and or Ace Attorney or something, and like so it's like we wanted to have some of that quality.
And it was tough to do that in a game that is primarily about people yelling at you.
Right.
So that's that was, I guess, one of those that kind of informed the direction that we went from that beginning. From those early prototypes that were, largely about disasters happening. We kind of, I guess, used sort of the metagame and the plot and world building and stuff as a vector to get that heart across. So I guess that's something that we won't really be able to know if we succeeded at until the game comes out and people can kind of find all of the big picture stuff.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, it's a little crazy. There is like a metagame plot, and it took us that's another benefit of working on the game for 8 years. It increases the chance that like one day you'll just be like, oh my god, this should be the ending.
I do. I mean, you joke about that being sort of like non-contiguous development time, and there's some truth to that. But there's honestly, like, for all of the pain that I'm sure that it was, spreading that development over 8 years, I think must have been useful in some cases for a game that is this. I mean, it sounds ridiculous to say creative, but like, this style of game requires that you put together all of these really disparate ideas of things that can possibly happen, and that, like, the generative process of coming up with all of that and then weeding through them and finding the ones that work and the ones that work together. I have to imagine that the time that was spent sort of with this in the back of your mind helped develop that.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, it would be some pretty complex accounting on the big scales. There's definitely that. There's like, it's definitely very helpful to be able to like keep problems in the back of your mind. Not just with procedurality, but also design problems, UI problems,
Sure.
narrative problems.
Sure.
There were plenty of those that it really benefited us to be able to, marinate and come back with a clear head and stuff.
Yeah. It's an interesting counterfactual, like how different would it have been if it was all in a row? I'm sure it would have been different, but I just don't know how.
There's a lot of logistical stuff on the other side of the scale, like only working on it, like a day, a week. Like there's a lot of context switching and recovering. There's a lot more production overhead. There's a lot more like having a meeting just feels kind of terrible when you have 8 hours to work on the game, and then it's like, oh, all right, I guess we got to talk about this.
Yeah.
It was not super. Yeah, it would have been more efficient with less time, because there was just like so many meetings Mike and I had that are just us thinking of like weird speculative scams that have nothing to do with the game, that like really.
Yeah,
I don't know why that's our like default mode. Is
like a lot of them, some of them then looped back around and became like the premises of missions or things like that. But yeah, we tended to go. We have a pretty short attention span, meeting wise, I suppose. That's one of those things where we kind of learned our limits as development went on. I was like, okay. We gotta figure this out at some point, but right now we're just coming up with scams again.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, there's almost like an inverse relationship between how creative we can be and how useful the idea is that we think of at the end. Like it's like the best ideas are totally useless. Like we're just talking about like a kind of cross between a private equity firm and a ghost hunting show, like where like you go into like a company that's having financial problems and you convince them it's because they're haunted. I mean, I don't know, maybe there's an audience for that.
I would watch that.
Yeah, so maybe we'll pitch it to what is that, like the Learning Channel? Is that
there you go. It seems like right up the Learning Channel's alley. Yeah.
So yeah, that's an example scam. Yeah,
No, that's very good.
yeah, it's, I don't know. I definitely wouldn't. I don't know. Like, in a way, I think like if you want to, as an indie, make something of this scope, like there's kind of no choice but to stretch it out over a while, unless you've already
Yeah, I mean, if
got
you
somebody
do
who's
have
paid
the
for it.
ability to get a full-time job for like 3 years and save up and then make an indie game for 3 years, if you know, are like a talented engineer who could pull down, you know, enough to subsist for 2 years in 1 year, then
Right.
I have
Yeah.
friends who did that, and I think the mathematics work out.
Right.
But you know,
Especially
yeah,
if
I
you
mean,
move to Thailand or something, right? Like, then you could really
that's true.
stretch it
Yeah,
out.
I mean, there are a lot of things that you can do if you're like, you know, if you want to hustle more. But I guess we didn't really. I don't know. I guess you always have a choice, but we were kind of, you know, God, I was not in my 30s when I started this game, but
Right.
I was, you know, and I think I was engaged, and you know, like I was wanted some stability in life,
Sure.
and so I, you know, wanted to have a day job, and so when you have a day job, uh, yeah, I guess I wanted to have a day job, but I also wanted to like overachieve with this game and have it be very like have that polish and that visual dynamism and stuff. And it turns out the only way to do both of those is to spend a while making it.
Yeah.
I do, the one thing, I think this is something that David disagrees with me on, but there are days when I regret not, and this is perhaps also a scam, but I sort of regret not releasing the game more often. Which is to say, when we had like a prototype that was okay but not great, I kind of regret not putting it out there and like charging $3 for it or something.
For this game or for the
Yeah,
previous one?
yeah, like the previous one and this one, like you know, like with Astronaut the Best, this is like a pretty, you know, it's a game that feels pretty polished and good. But I think if we had spun off like you know, the early numbersy prototype in like a pretty hasty manner and then done that one or two other times, we could have started to develop an audience and like kind of find people who were into this sort of game, and then
So like, yeah,
incrementally work our way up to the more deluxe type game. But
I think more about the previous one, you know, because so like for the audience that doesn't know, we this game actually happened because we had a previous game we did for a year called Satisfaction Guaranteed that kind of crashed and burned. Like it was great style wise, we had a lot of great ideas for the plot, characters we loved, but just the mechanics weren't really there. And we decided to just cut it off and start this from the get-go as something that we were pretty sure mechanically would work as a reaction to that. But like, I think that we've both seen at least some studios that were narrative focused that had projects that really weren't any more together than Satisfaction Guaranteed was, and they kind of serially did that, built up an audience, and you know, like, and improved over, you know, the course of the game. I will say a lot of those places, I think, have had some state funding that wasn't available to us, so I don't know
That's
if
true.
the accounting would add up the same way.
that would be
But
nice.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it is possible. Yeah, like in retrospect, thinking about it, that I came out of game design grad school with like a little bit of a I don't know, like a game design perfectionist complex, maybe, that like you know, like we're trying to innovate and make something new. So in order for a game to be worth working on, it has to have like an elegant system that makes sense and that hasn't been done before. And that's like cool for, you know, pushing the industry forward and making sure that you're doing new stuff. But also, like, if you're making your first game, you kind of don't necessarily have to do that. You can make a game that kind of does it 50%, and it's still a valuable thing to put out there into the
Yeah, and I'd argue it actually almost never happens. Like literally almost never. This game doesn't do it. This game is Princess Maker.
Yeah.
Underneath all this, and
we
like,
realized
and
that a couple years into making
it. couple years into it. So it's like, yeah, like it's okay. I mean, like Shakespeare only wrote what 2 original plots or something like that, right? Like it's okay to borrow a lot. That's totally fine. I think it's. I mean, maybe you end up with different problems in the end, but yeah, we ended up borrowing more than we realized. So
we ended up like parallel developing a lot of stuff that had existed, and then being like, well, we could have just taken this UI, huh? That would have been helpful.
Yeah, sometimes you have to go the long way around.
Yeah, but it's good. You know, it is good to have that like encyclopedic like knowledge. I mean, not that anyone can like have an encyclopedic knowledge of how many games are out now, but I was always struck by like when you look at like filmmakers like Scorsese or something, it's like he's like literally seen almost every single film that is a release, like in a major release, right? Like, and that's part of like why he can do what he does, and like it's like there is something to just having that like bank in your head of like a lot of what's come before.
Like, man, I remember at GDC running into like a recent game design grad who was like really excited about like his idea for a game, and then I was like, oh, like Secret of Mana, and then he was like, what's that? And I was like, I took out my phone and like I showed him a video of Secret of Mana, and he was just like completely crushed. And I was like, oh man, I feel bad about that guy going to game design school, and like, you know, that it's just, it's tough because thanks a lot Indie Apocalypse, there's just like so many games out there that it's impossible to play even all the good ones, and
or even know that they exist.
Exactly. You can't know what you're missing out on. There might be like, I mean, with all the games that are released, it's possible that there's something out there that like is doing similar mechanics to what we're building, and that we would have learned a lot from playing. There's probably a lot of games like that. There are probably less so when we started in 2014, but you know, now
I think there's more like, in certain respects, there's several games that have come out since we've been making it that have a lot more similarities than anything that would have been around when we started. I think just due to how many people are making games now, and like that, you know, they're trying more different. But I think that's no good.
I mean, I think that's fair. Like, certainly the number of games is tremendous. I mean, I do like something that I see from the two of you very clearly, and that I think is largely intrinsic to the two of you, but I also hope is something that my students at USC get out of their education, is a confidence in your voice, that when you discover that the Secret of Mana exists, it's not a crushing moment of, oh no, the idea that I had this precious thing, it's been done before and therefore has no value, but understanding that as a developer who has an imagination and is a human being and has a perspective and a life, what you bring to that when you develop it is going to be utterly unique. And yeah, I mean, you joke Princess Maker, sure, there's a lot of shared DNA under the hood in what these games are doing, but this game is not Princess Maker. I mean, like, this game is something utterly unique. For one thing. Yeah, unfortunately, like, that's on the downside. But I mean, it is its own thing in a really tremendous, magical way.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. There's something. Oh yeah. I think like from school, the kind of, I don't know, the best punk rock way to put it was kind of when you're making a game, there has to be something within your game idea that you're willing to defend. Like, I don't know, we called it a shiny thing. There has to be like a glimmering pure heart at like the core of your game that's like the reason why you get up in the morning and work on it. That like you that when you face, you know, setbacks or like questions about the direction of your game or things like that, that you can use to kind of guide what your game is really about. And it can be a narrative element, it can be like a theme thing, or telling a personal story or trying to convey an experience, it can be like a mechanical innovation, it can be an art style, it can be like just whatever is the reason you're working on the game. But I think it's important to kind of know like what motivates you is what's going to make your game special. And in most cases. And what you want to do is kind of take that and make it so that other people can see what's special about it. So that was kind of, for us with this game, that shiny thing was the idea of making a moral laboratory, I guess, of making kind of this, like using that procedurality and unpredictability to make a situation where there's never a right answer, where you're making these moral decisions, but in a context where you're not going to be looking at an FAQ or anything to see like what's going to happen, where you're just like kind of freed to roleplay and freed to just be like, I wonder what will happen if I do this, and use it as kind of a testing ground to try out different values and different ways of looking at the world and see what happens.
Yeah. And like also like it's something that you kind of find, like I think that's like, like one thing when we were in school, something that I didn't really totally get was, how you transition from prototype to something fleshed out, like we're always told like make a prototype, but then what's the difference, right? Like is you trash the prototype and then you build from the ground up or something. And it's kind of like, in a way, it's kind of the wrong question. It's like what really matters is if you have uncertainty, getting on a tight iteration loop about the uncertainty. And then like anything that's not that uncertainty, then you can apply the like more waterfall methodologies and just build it out. But like it's really like so many things in design and development of games are about tight iteration loops to resolve that uncertainty. And we didn't do it in any kind of genius way. Like this feels like this so far from like the ideal, of like Cactus or something like that.
Especially because, as you said, with procedural stuff, there's like the idea of critical mass, like with astronaut traits and stuff. There's like you need there to be so many cards in the deck, so to speak, before you can draw a hand. But I think we tried to combat that by making the game just have like a bunch of orthogonal random systems that add up, like a bunch of little dumb procedural systems, rather than like one grand like storytelling simulation or anything like that. I tend to, procedural wise, I'm always like, most people like building emergent stuff from the ground up, like simulating characters and events, and then like those will build together into stories. But in general, I figure other people have that covered. And what I want to do is start with the idea of a story, start guaranteeing that there will be, a beginning, a middle, and an end, that it'll kind of have these beats, that it'll be something that you can recognize as a good story. And then once you have that, just mixing up the details and kind of figuring out ways to make it non-deterministic and unpredictable and interesting within that framework. So with this, we have that kind of like every mission has its branching structure. Every mission you end up going to space if you win and stuff. It has those guaranteed elements, and then within it, it's got some randomness, and then within that structure, we also occasionally like pull the rug out from under you and say like, just kidding, that wasn't actually the structure, in order to just kind of get you into a mindset where you're not sure what's what's going to happen
And this is
next.
a pretty like consistent line of mics from even when we were in grad school. Like the bottom up procedurality doesn't work.
Well,
like basically,
I wouldn't say that. I'd just say like enough people. There seem to be more people thinking about that than thinking about this type.
it's not something Mike wants to think about, at least. And like I wasn't sure, like he kind of convinced me over the years. Like when I didn't know much about procedural narrative when we were in school, and so we tried different things, and yeah, I don't know. Like it seems like it's the idea of having the skeleton and filling in the blanks and figuring out where you can which of those are variable and how variable they can be once the backbone's kind of in there is a good way to think about it.
I really appreciate that about the approach that you've taken here to sort of procedural narrative, and that Mike, I've seen in your work for years and years, approaching procedural narrative that way. For me, I actually don't know what your background, either of you, is in this, but for me, it is very reminiscent as a philosophy to a lot of like modern narrativist or dramatist tabletop RPGs that are sort of much more interested in using dice to generate a good storytelling experience rather than trying to simulate a world to a nebulous end. And I think that there's a lot of like different strategy that I see in those kind of branches of game design, partially because of the different media, but I think there's a philosophy in common that is really strong and really interesting, that sort of like creates these consistently satisfying or interesting or entertaining stories, because that's sort of what the whole point is. That's what the whole goal is.
Yeah, I think that's a really strong parallel in terms of just, as a kid, I liked reading lore-heavy stuff, but like when it came down to like playing a tabletop stuff, like reading all that lore, it doesn't really help you. I played in, one or two fairly meandering campaigns that, were just kind of like, oh, okay, I guess we go over here, we fought some goblins and stuff. Like, where, it was really satisfying to play Fiasco for the first time, for example. I think that's credit, that gets a lot of credit as kind of a big game changer or popularizer, but
turning point.
That idea of just taking like like we're gonna start with like, we're gonna guarantee that you get through a good and interesting story, and then you're gonna there's some key factors about how the story is gonna play out, whether it's gonna have a happy or sad ending, etc., and you're gonna figure that out with these dice. But we're also gonna get it on track so that you can tell a story in like a few hours, instead of just having a bunch of experiences and hoping that they add up to a story. And I should say a good DM won't let that happen. A good DM will be able to balance like having every individual character's story arc and having this overarching story arc and still letting these emergent moments happen and stuff. But that's very hard, and it's obviously very, very hard for a computer to do, or to like have in a video game.
Yeah, I think another motivation behind this particular form for us had to do with that, like in a lot of I'm sure a lot of the innovation in the tabletop space is kind of motivated by similar concerns to this. Is that like in D&D or whatever, you can tell like any story, as long as it involves like a party of adventurers, like who have like weapons and spells, and they go out and do that, and it's like, but there's like a lot of stories that aren't that, but and so I think that was a big, like, we wanted to get at like a different space of stuff that wasn't being exploited.
Right. Yeah. We weirdly with this game use the phrase like low hanging fruit probably early on of like there's like way more games about being a fantasy adventurer and like hitting things with the sword than there are about like being the leader of a team of people.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you can make some arguments that like Dragon Age is both and stuff and etc. But like in general, like just the problems that the games are asking you to solve. There's like it's really cool that people are making games in both spaces, but we just kind of when you remove that thematic grounding, specifically about combat, when you remove the thematic grounding of combat, then like a lot of traditional game mechanics don't make as much sense.
Work, yeah.
And it makes things a lot tougher. So making a game that has conflict but no combat, and also not anything that you can, like Wintermore, a game I made a few years ago, I was like, oh, we'll just make it metaphorical combat, and that's fine.
I think this is like an underrated thing for game design, though. It's like over all the years I've worked in games, I've kind of more and more come to the conclusion that like games like genealogically have a very strong origin in preparing for war, like is like the human species, and it's very hard to escape from that. Like if you want to do that, you're definitely going against the grain to some degree. And while there's definitely been different kinds of success over the years with that, there's a reason why that's the mean that things revert to. I think, and it is tricky. But I think it's not even just us in these tabletop games, but like I think a pretty substantial portion of our generation of designers wanted to do stuff like this and just see what could be done in these areas.
I mean, hopefully, like I don't know, but it'll be more preparatory for the wars that our generation has to face, of like internet wars or
more getting yelled at and less getting shot at, I guess.
Right. Right. I mean, a lot of the chess style stuff is just not really going to be relevant anyway.
Right.
But I should, obligatorily say that chess can provide a metaphor for many things in life and provide good strategic thinking benefits for children or whatever. But like this is, there's a world to explore of mixing up the thematics of games, and who knows what like weird, seemingly like niche subgenre is actually gonna reveal itself to be a rich vein of mechanics that will, become like equally valuable patterns and mechanics for other games to adopt and explore further. So, as much as I can, it's my goal to kind of explore and try to find what's out there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I appreciate that you guys are doing that and keeping at it, like exploring all of those possibilities. And this game, I think, really is an expression of that. I think that like this is exploring that space in a really genuine way, that I'm hopeful is going to be the basis for a lot of people to continue exploring ideas about how you can tell stories with interactivity, how you can tell stories with procedurality, how you can create experiences that feel good as stories in this kind of a medium. I think that this is really tremendous. I'm super excited to keep playing it and to get to play it more and more.
Yeah. Thanks very much. I really,
thank you.
Really appreciate that. And hopefully, the parts that aren't just the first half of the tutorial will be even better.
Well, for my part, I love tutorials. I really appreciate sort of like how much effort has to go into that educational component of games that is prevalent, that is like ubiquitous in games. We have to teach how games work, and it's not easy to do. It's in fact extremely difficult, especially when you have a game that breaks preconceptions or tries to drop the player into a bizarre world where they don't know what all of the rules are. I think that tells you a lot about sort of the way that a game is made, to see how it tutorializes itself.
Is there a streamer that just does only tutorials, like as soon as it gets out
That's
of
a
it?
great question. I don't know that. I'm not familiar with that, but that's a great gimmick. Like,
yeah. All right, I'm feeling pretty good about this. I'm feeling like I know what's going on in this game. All right, we're done.
We're done. That's it. I'm sure that would be educational for devs. Yeah. No, absolutely.
All right. Well, yeah, I think that pretty much brings us to the end of our time here. So yeah, thanks so much for joining us. This was a really awesome conversation. We got to talk about a lot of that designery stuff. That's the whole reason why we're doing this, and it feels really good to be able to discuss everything behind this game.
Oh my gosh, Mike, it was absolutely my pleasure. It's great to hang out with both of you and get to talk about what went into this game and talk about design generally. I love this. This was a blast for me, so thanks for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much. And for, I guess, everybody else out there watching, you can feel free to reach out if you want to talk about design stuff on our Discord or through social media or anything like that. And you can, of course, play this demo of Astronaut the Best for yourself by, you're probably on our Steam page now, so you can just click the demo button. So yeah, thanks so much to all of you out there for joining us for this conversation. And I hope you have an awesome LudoNarraCon. Happy LudoNarraCon, one and all.